Look around. Everyone's talking, posting, shouting for attention, but no one's actually doing the work. You want to know why your life isn't changing? Because you're too loud and too distracted. Real power doesn't announce itself, it builds in silence. It's time to disappear, lock in, and come back unrecognizable. Most people underestimate the raw power of silence. In a world that constantly tells you to speak your mind, post your thoughts, share your journey, and chase attention like a drug, there's a rare kind of strength in keeping your mouth shut. Not out of fear or submission, but out of sheer control. Because when you're silent, no one knows what's coming. No one knows what you're thinking, what you're planning, or how far ahead you really are. And that's exactly what makes you dangerous. When people don't know what moves you're making, they can't block them. They can't sabotage what they can't see. Silence becomes your shield, your advantage, your weapon. The truth is, when you talk too much, you bleed power. Every time you explain your vision to someone who doesn't get it, you chip away at your belief. Every time you announce your plans to people who are secretly hoping you fail, you give them ammo. You hand them your thoughts on a silver platter, and now they get to influence you, mock you, or worse, copy you. That's why silence is key. You're not meant to tell the world what you're doing. You're meant to do it quietly, relentlessly, without asking for permission or applause. The reason the most dangerous men move in silence is because they know talk is cheap. Anyone can say they're going to change. Anyone can post motivational garbage and act like they're building something. But real winners, they disappear. They vanish from the noise, from the spotlight, from the opinions of the masses. They go ghost, not because they're hiding, but because they're sharpening, training, preparing. They're too locked in to waste time explaining themselves to people who don't matter. The more you speak, the more you're giving others a map to your mind. They can trace your fears, your desires, your weaknesses. That's why people who can't control their tongues usually can't control their lives. They're too busy trying to be understood instead of being focused. But when you choose silence, you're in full control. You don't react, you don't explain, you move. You act, you produce results. People can't argue with results. They can question your ideas, your methods, your beliefs, but they can't deny what's already done. And that's why the silent man always wins. Silence is not passivity, it's not indifference, it's intensity. It's that look in someone's eyes that says, I don't need to tell you what I'm doing, you'll see it when I'm finished. That kind of energy makes people nervous. It makes them curious. And eventually, it makes them respect you. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it in silence. While everyone else is trying to be noticed, trying to be seen, you're becoming undeniable. You don't ask for attention. You attract it through the discipline, the mystery, the grind behind closed doors. People around you won't understand your silence at first. They'll think you're avoiding them, being rude, acting strange. Let them think that, because their confusion is your advantage. Every minute they spend trying to figure you out is a minute you've spent getting better, stronger, smarter. You're not cold, you're calculated. You're not antisocial, you're focused. That's what ghost mode really is. It's the ultimate rejection of the weak man's addiction to attention. It's stepping into the shadows to build in peace, away from opinions, noise, and empty praise. The man who learns to be silent in a loud world becomes impossible to predict, impossible to shake, impossible to manipulate. He doesn't need to speak, because his presence alone demands respect. His silence says more than his words ever could. When you operate from that level of control, you don't chase power, you own it, and the world watches, quietly, as everything starts to fall exactly where you intended. When you isolate yourself, when you cut out all the noise and sit alone with no distractions, no opinions, no outside validation, you're forced to confront the real you. That's where the war begins. Most people can't stand being alone because silence exposes the truth. It reveals how weak their routines are, how undisciplined their habits have become, and how much time they waste trying to escape themselves. Isolation strips away the lies. It removes the masks, and what's left is either a man with control or a man who's been running from the mirror for years. Ghost mode forces you into this confrontation. You cut off the useless conversations, the endless scrolling, the fake friendships, and what you're left with is brutal clarity. That's where discipline is born. Discipline doesn't grow in comfort. It doesn't show up in a room full of people cheering you on or hyping you up. It grows in silence. It grows in the dark. It grows when nobody is watching. Because when nobody is checking on you, when no one's asking about your progress, when there's no applause to chase, your only option is to become your own master. You wake up because you said you would. You train because it's part of the standard you created. You grind because the vision demands it. There's no shortcut, no hype man, no motivation speech, just you and the mission. That's discipline in its purest form. Most people think isolation is loneliness. That's a lie told by people who've never used it properly. Real isolation, when done with purpose, is a sanctuary. It's a forge. It's where you upgrade your mind, your body, your routine. You're not running from the world, you're rising above it. Every day, in ghost mode is a sharpening. You learn to control your time instead of reacting to everyone else's. You learn to command your space instead of letting others invade it. You stop giving energy to nonsense and redirect every ounce of it into your own evolution. That kind of power can't be faked. It has to be built in silence, alone. Discipline is about repetition, not motivation, not emotion. It's about doing what you said you'd do long after the feeling has passed. And when you isolate, that's when you begin to master repetition. You wake up and hit your goals, not because anyone is watching, but because that's who you've become. It becomes automatic. You don't need reminders. You don't need external force. You are the force. You've created a system so tight, so precise, that there's no space for excuses. That's what ghost mode trains. It builds machines out of men. In the outside world, people waste hours being pulled in 10 different directions. Group chats, endless social media, notifications, mindless drama. That's why they stay soft. That's why they never evolve. You cut that off and suddenly your schedule opens up. You see clearly. You have hours that no one else has because you're not wasting them trying to please people who wouldn't even notice if you vanish. That free time, you use it to build, to learn, to improve. That's how discipline becomes a lifestyle, not a phase, not a 30-day challenge, a new operating system. Every successful transformation starts in isolation. It's the gym with no cameras. It's the early mornings no one sees. It's the meals you prep alone. It's the nights you sacrifice for the bigger picture. You start stacking those silent victories, and eventually you become untouchable. Not because you told the world what you were doing, but because you did it anyway. That's what ghost mode teaches. That's the discipline it demands. No excuses, no noise, just execution day after day until the man you were is unrecognizable compared to the one you've become. Silence is a weapon most people are too scared to wield. They're addicted to noise, addicted to sharing, addicted to telling the world their every move because they crave attention, validation, and cheap dopamine hits. But when you go ghost, when you stay silent, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. If people don't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're building, they can't interfere, they can't compete, and they can't slow you down. Most people waste time explaining their goals, bragging about their hustle, looking for approval. That's weakness. The strong move in silence and let results speak for them. When you keep quiet, nobody knows your strategy. And if they don't know your strategy, they can't copy it, sabotage it, or distract you from it. The power of being underestimated is one of the most dangerous weapons a man can have. When you talk less and do more, people think you're idle. They relax, they let their guard down. Meanwhile, you're building in the shadows. You're stacking knowledge, wealth, discipline, and strength while they're still talking about how they plan to start. That silence gives you the edge. Everyone else is playing checkers on a loud stage and you're playing chess behind closed doors. That's how real power moves. Quietly, you disappear from the noise. You stop announcing everything. You move with intention and watch how fast you outgrow the ones who never shut up about what they were going to do. When you say less, you think more. Silence gives you space to analyze, reflect, and calculate. You notice things others miss. You become hyper-aware of your surroundings, your opportunities, and your enemies. You become strategic, not reactive. You don't get baited into useless arguments. You don't let emotions drive your responses. You learn to pause, observe, and strike only when it's time. That's a level of control most men never reach because they're too busy chasing validation to ever sit still long enough to find clarity. But when you master silence, you master patience. And patience is a rare kind of aggression. One that always wins. When you go silent, you remove expectations. You're not giving people a chance to judge your process or pace. You don't owe them updates. You don't need to impress them. That frees you. You're no longer building a life to be seen. You're building a life to be lived. Every move becomes about efficiency, not performance. Every choice you make is for your mission, not for likes or claps. You become dangerous because your drive isn't fueled by attention, it's fueled by vision. And the less you speak on it, the harder it is to be shaken from it. Most people can't handle silence because they're scared of what it reveals about them. They want the noise to distract from their insecurity. But silence exposes everything. That's why it's powerful. It shows you where the leaks are, mentally, emotionally, physically, and it forces you to fix them. No more hiding behind excuses. No more pretending you're making progress when you're not. When there's no one around to impress or fool, the truth comes out. You either elevate or you stay stuck. And that decision becomes brutally obvious when all the noise is gone. Going ghost also protects your energy. Every conversation you avoid is energy you save. Every argument you skip is time you keep. Every fake friend you cut off is mental space you reclaim. And when you have that space, that energy, that focus, your growth becomes unstoppable. You finally have the bandwidth to read, train, create, build, and execute at a level most can't reach because they're too drained by nonsense. Silence isn't weakness, it's selective strength. It's choosing your battles, choosing your investments, choosing your path. And that's how you get ahead. While everyone else is too distracted being loud, you're too focused becoming lethal. When you isolate yourself from the world, you find out exactly who you are. No filters, no opinions, no distractions, just raw, uncomfortable truth staring you in the face. That's the beauty of solitude. It's brutal, but it's honest. And once you confront that version of yourself, you either break or you build. Most people avoid being alone because they're terrified of what they'll discover in the silence. They don't want to realize they're undisciplined, weak, lazy, or broken. But isolation doesn't create those flaws. It just exposes them. And the strong use that exposure as fuel. They don't run from the pain, they embrace it. They look at their flaws and say, good, now I know exactly what to fix. Real transformation doesn't happen around noise. It doesn't happen in crowds, on social media, or during conversations where everyone is pretending to be someone they're not. Real transformation happens when it's just you, your thoughts, your failures, and your goals. That's when you become accountable. That's when you stop blaming others and start owning your situation. In that quiet space, there's nowhere to hide. There's no one to distract you from your weakness, no one to praise you for mediocre efforts. It's you versus the mirror. And that kind of confrontation is what most men avoid their whole lives. They surround themselves with people and distractions so they never have to deal with the fact that they're not who they pretend to be. But the ones who embrace isolation, who go ghost and dive deep into their grind, they level up at a speed most can't understand. Because every minute they're alone is a minute used for reflection, planning, and execution. They're not wasting time on gossip, opinions, or cheap dopamine. They're focused on self-mastery. They read, train, think, write, and build without the need for applause. Every day in isolation is a deposit into their future. They understand that silence is not loneliness, it's alignment. It's syncing with the mission. And the more aligned you are, the more dangerous you become. Isolation teaches discipline like nothing else. When there's no one watching, no one checking in, no one praising or punishing, you either do the work or you don't. That's real integrity. That's where consistency is born. In the shadows, when it's just you versus the excuses, you learn to push yourself because your purpose demands it, not because someone else expects it. You realize that greatness doesn't need an audience, it just needs action. And the more consistent you are in that silence, the louder your results speak later. Being alone also teaches clarity. When you strip away the noise, you finally hear your own thoughts. You start seeing through the lies society sold you. You begin to understand your purpose, your values, and your priorities with brutal clarity. You stop reacting to every distraction because you finally figured out what actually matters. And once you have that clarity, your movements become surgical. No wasted steps, no aimless wandering, just precision. And with that clarity comes confidence, not the fake kind that needs validation, but the quiet, unshakable kind that's built on knowing you've done the work, that you faced yourself, cleaned out the weaknesses, and built a foundation no one else sees. That's the kind of confidence that can't be faked and can't be broken. It's the kind that's earned in isolation, one hard decision at a time. People will never understand why you disappeared. Why you stopped showing up to pointless hangouts, stopped answering every message, stopped playing their little games. But you're not here to be understood. You're here to evolve, and evolution requires separation. Ghost mode isn't about being antisocial. It's about being intentional, about creating distance between who you are and who you're destined to be. Because sometimes the only way to level up is to vanish, grind in silence, and reappear unrecognizable. Going ghost isn't about disappearing just to be mysterious. It's about silencing the distractions that are eating your focus alive. You can't upgrade your life if your attention is scattered in 50 directions. Every DM, every notification, every useless debate with people going nowhere is stealing your most valuable asset, your time. And once your time is gone, so is your opportunity to change. The world is built on noise. It thrives on pulling you away from what actually matters. Social media wants your attention. Your so-called friends want your attention. Drama, gossip, the news, it's all fighting to be the loudest voice in your head. And if you're not careful, that noise becomes your reality. You end up wasting years chasing nothing because you were too distracted to build something. When you go ghost, you take your power back. You're no longer reactive. You're not checking your phone every 5 seconds. You're not entertaining low-energy conversations or validating people who never built anything themselves. Instead, you're locking in. You're redirecting all that mental energy toward building your mind, your body, your money, and your future. Focus is a weapon, and ghost mode sharpens it. You get more done in a week of isolation than most people do in a year surrounded by chaos. Because when it's just you and the mission, there's no room for excuses. No one's there to save you. No one's there to distract you. It's either win or stay broke. Evolve or stay average. And once you start cutting the noise, something insane happens. You begin to realize how much of your old life was just filler. Dead-end conversations, pointless scrolling, fake connections that drained your energy instead of fueling it. You stop caring about being liked. You stop chasing validation. You realize you were trying to impress people who don't even impress themselves. That's the real wake-up call. And from there, you get ruthless. You start protecting your energy like it's your bank account. You stop letting people withdraw from you when they bring nothing to the table. You become selfish with your focus because you know that focus is the seed of every breakthrough. Cutting distractions also reveals your weaknesses. When you remove the noise, you're forced to face the areas you've been neglecting. You notice the times you procrastinate. You catch yourself making excuses. And without distractions to hide behind, those excuses start to disgust you. That's where growth begins. You stop blaming and start correcting. You start stacking habits. You build momentum in silence. And the more you build, the less you need from the outside world. You stop seeking attention because you're giving attention to yourself. You stop chasing people because you're chasing goals. You replace conversations with action. And while everyone else is talking, you're moving in silence, and movement always wins. You'll also notice how rare focus has become. In a world addicted to noise, the man who can control his attention becomes a god among mortals. He sees what others miss. He finishes what others start and abandon. He becomes untouchable because his mind isn't for sale. That's the level ghost mode takes you to. You become a weapon. Lethal, not because you're loud, but because you're locked in. You say less and do more, and your silence becomes louder than any noise could ever be. The ones who master ghost mode, they don't need announcements. Their progress announces itself. Their results speak. Their silence echoes with discipline, hunger, and execution. While everyone's busy trying to look successful, they disappear and build something that makes them undeniable. And when they return, they don't explain, they just dominate. When you come out of ghost mode, you're not stepping out the same person who went in. You're stepping out as a weapon, sharpened, hardened, and focused, beyond anything the average person can understand. That's why staying silent while working on yourself is so powerful, because when you finally emerge, the results hit different. You didn't talk about it, you didn't post about it, you didn't seek applause, you just moved in silence, built your empire brick by brick, and now it speaks for itself. That transformation earns more respect than any amount of noise ever could. People see the changes, they feel the energy shift, and they can't help but take notice. You didn't ask for validation, you forced it. You didn't demand attention, you attracted it. That's real power. Most people blow their potential by constantly announcing their every move. They say they're working on something big, they talk about changing their life, they promise they're different now, but that's all it is, talk, empty words. Ghost mode destroys that weakness. It forces you to stop performing and start producing. When you strip away the audience, you realize how much of what you were doing was for show. Without likes, comments, or attention, would you still grind? would you still get up early, still train hard, still push forward without anyone clapping for you? And that's where real discipline lives, when you keep going with no one watching, no one congratulating you, just you versus you. And when you build in that space, you become unstoppable when the spotlight finally comes back around. Silence becomes your edge. In a world that can't stop sharing every move, every thought, every feeling, staying quiet makes you unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. Nobody knows what you're building. Nobody knows what's coming next. They just see the results drop out of nowhere like a bomb. That silence frustrates people. It confuses them. They start asking questions, trying to figure out how you leveled up so fast. But by the time they catch on, it's already too late. You're already miles ahead. You turned isolation into elevation, and now they're left playing catch-up. Another reason this approach hits so hard is because it protects your energy. When you talk too early, you invite doubt. You invite distractions. You invite opinions from people who have no idea what they're talking about. And that can shake your momentum. But when you keep quiet, your energy stays pure. Your focus doesn't get watered down by other people's fear or laziness. You build a fortress around your mind and only let in what serves your growth. That's how you rise, with clarity, with precision, with intensity. And when the results show up, whether it's in your physique, your bank account, your mindset, or your lifestyle, there's nothing left to say. The work speaks. The glow up is loud without you saying a word. The way you carry yourself changes. Your confidence isn't fake or forced. It's forged through discipline, forged through sacrifice, through days and nights when no one believed in you, but you still showed up. That's the energy people feel when you walk into a room. That's the respect you command when you reappear. You don't have to flex, you don't have to explain, you just live the result, and that result shuts everyone up. This isn't just about success, it's about identity. When you return from ghost mode, you're no longer the man who wanted to change. You are the change. You're living proof of what silence, focus, and discipline can create. And the best part? You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't need to justify your time away, because the results you brought back with you explain everything better than words ever could. When you enter ghost mode, you're not escaping the world, you're confronting yourself. You're cutting out the noise, walking away from the distractions, and facing the one person responsible for your future, you. In silence, you build. In isolation, you grow. And when you return as someone unrecognizable to the version of yourself that was always seeking approval. Ghost mode isn't a phase. It's a transformation. You stop talking, start grinding, and let the results introduce you. Because at the end of the day, real power isn't loud. It moves in silence, and it dominates without a warning.